Retail Touchpoints. I'm Debbie Hauss, and I'm here with Adam Blair and Glenn, who's one of our editors. We're just going to do a little recap of the the second full day, actually, of the event. I'm going to share some high-level insights. I know everybody's always wondering, what's the hot thing this year? My theme for the event this year is personalization is the new omnichannel. And, because when omnichannel got to be a thing, and I know we're all tired of talking about it, but it was, okay, we now know we have to do omnichannel, but now we have to get serious about the strategies behind it. And I feel like that's where we are with personalization right now. Everyone knows they need to do personalization, but they're now getting more strategic about it and thinking about what are the specific strategies we need to do. And some of the things that came up in my conversations and meetings during the last 2 days were around, number one, taking RFID a step further and accessing the analytics behind what's going on with inventory. So I think that's one of the ways that, one of the kind of supply chain behind the scenes ways that retailers are going to do a better job, making sure they have the right inventory in the right place at the right time. I think the discussion around making email marketing more relevant by updating your emails in real time so that if you send me a sale that ends tomorrow and I don't open till the next day, when I open the next day, it's updated. It's not telling me about a sale that already happened. I think that's pretty cool. Cross-selling and upselling in different ways. So making suggestions around ensembles and cross-selling, upselling, accessories, that kind of thing. And the last high-level trend that I have seen that was kind of cool was pay by face, right? So, facial recognition, and you can just pay by face, which I thought was kind of cool. Although we don't all want to be looking at our own faces all the time everywhere we go, but
someone else's face?
Probably not. That might not be a good idea. The one thing I'm seeing less of this year definitely is virtual reality. Augmented reality is coming into its own a little bit more in retail, especially on the customer-facing side. But virtual reality, if it's being used maybe behind the scenes, but it's just stayed a little too clunky, I think, for customer-facing, and I think a lot of people are backing away from it. It was a really hot topic last year. It's not this year from what I can see. I'm going to turn over to Glenn Taylor, who's going to fill us in a little bit on some of his insights from the last 2 days, and then we'll finish up with Adam.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, perhaps the biggest story that I saw over this show has been the tax reform bill and the implications of that. I was at the NRF Gala last night, and a few of the CEOs I've spoken to had actually brought up how that was a help for their company. A lot of the press people were speaking about it. Earlier today, I was actually in an economic roundtable session where Brian Nagel of Oppenheimer had actually brought up that Costco is set to save around $400 million this year, and Home Depot might actually save as much as $1 billion. So right there, it shows that these companies now do have a lot more opportunities to really reinvest back in their company, whether it's in the retailer, the experience, or even the new technologies that we talk about a lot. Then the second trend I really noticed was there was a session I was at about the logistical transformation that we're seeing in a lot of retailers, and trying to keep high and fast moving items on the shelf. We know how in retailers where it's very easy to see items come off, and there's always the worry about whether they can get put back on. Wakefern Foods, the parent co-op of ShopRite, actually is piloting shopping carts with cameras in 50 of their stores, and these carts use computer vision so that when people push them through, they could discover which items are out of stock and send it to the back. Additionally, with that, they'll send an algorithm to allow people to build tasks based on that information, and what that does is it allows these employees to replenish items or even do promotions on certain items. And then finally, the third point that I noticed was, obviously AI, we talk about it a lot now, it's a huge deal, and one of the forerunners, I think, for 2018 going ahead is eBay. And in the past few years, the past 2 years, they've acquired 3 separate companies to boost this function as part of their idea to make it owned by the entire organization. And that's something that I think a lot of retailers should strive towards. And there's, compared to a lot of retailers that I've noticed, eBay happens to have AI at a lot of different functions of that customer journey, whether, say, mobile image recognition in the consideration phase, contextual commerce in the shopper browsing phase, or even chatbots in the post-consumer phase. So that's something to really look forward to. And like I just said, I mean, a lot of retailers can really follow that.
Awesome. Thank you. Adam.
Well, and it's interesting you're mentioning AI because one of the interesting sessions I just went to was about AI and ethics. So this is kind of the big picture feel of this for the people that are actually programming and creating the algorithms and feeding in the data. The panelists were talking about two main themes. One is making sure that the data that goes into any AI system is not biased or as unbiased as possible, that it's clean, because transparency is a big issue. As with anything in retail, ultimately the customer has to trust that the decision that comes out, whether it's AI or human-based, is something that isn't arbitrary. The other one that's unique to AI is, can you actually explain why the algorithm gave you the result that it did? And apparently, even the data scientists don't always know. They can they can get great results and it can really analyze the data in a strong way, but as they say, it's just very opaque. They're not sure, they can't always follow forensically back why it did what it did. My favorite quote though was from one of the panelists his name is the Venerable Tenzin Priyodashi. He's the head of the MIT Media Lab and also I believe a Buddhist monk. But he said if someone had said 10 years ago, he was talking about the potential growth of AI. If someone had said 10 years ago that social media might affect our democratic institutions, would people have believed it? And would it have stopped the development of social media? Probably not. So I found that fascinating, and the session had a lot of advice about that considering the ethical issues around AI has to be part of the entire development process and involve a lot more people than data scientists. It has to involve all the stakeholders and people from outside the organization and the ultimate users. So I thought that was interesting.
It's really interesting stuff because we're talking about the business value in it and the customer-facing value, and you need to think beyond that a lot of the time. And it's not just about the technology as well. You have to think about the implications and be careful as you move forward with it. So that's cool. Yeah, it was great to hear about both sides of AI today.
Definitely a lot going on.
Yeah. So
I guess the nightmare scenario is that AI might recommend that you try and market alcoholic beverages to people who are alcoholics. So there's no ethics around that, but it's not good for society and it's not good for the consumer.
On that note, I think the line is getting too long for the wine over there, and we'll be back tomorrow with a wrap up of the final day of NRF. Have a nice evening.